there was an outburst in the courtroom this morning as closing arguments were being heard in the triple murder trial of a member of the Hells Angel Motorcycle Club.
For the term of life without the possibility of parole.
The audio recordings were damaging to me, to my defense.
Prosecutors say 48-year-old Jay Witt will serve a mandatory 22.5 years in prison.
Roughly a dozen members of the biker gang were in the courtroom for Lancia's final moments of freedom.
Imagine living a life fueled by freedom, brotherhood, and the thrill of the open road, only to face the harsh reality of a life sentence behind bars. Today, we're diving deep into the stories of Hells Angels members who have confronted this grim fate. What happens when the adrenaline-fueled lifestyle collides with the unforgiving walls of a prison cell? We'll hear firsthand accounts of their emotional reactions, reflections on their choices, and the profound impact of their actions, not only on themselves, but also on their families and the club they once called home. Brace yourself for an eye-opening journey into the lives of those who once reveled in the thrill of the ride, but now face a future defined by regret and isolation. The reality of life sentences. To understand the gravity of life sentences for Hells Angels members, we must first recognize the allure of the motorcycle club lifestyle. For many, joining the Hells Angels represents freedom, brotherhood, and rebellion against societal norms. However, this lifestyle often leads to serious legal troubles, resulting in life sentences for some members. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, founded in the 1940s in California, has built a reputation for its strict code of loyalty, fierce brotherhood, and a penchant for violence. Over the decades, numerous members have faced significant legal challenges, including murder, drug trafficking, and other violent crimes. The penalties for these offenses are severe, and life sentences are not uncommon. These sentences signify not just a loss of freedom, but a profound transformation of identity. The men who once reveled in the thrill of the open road and the camaraderie of their fellow members find themselves isolated, grappling with the reality of prison life. The testimony of a convicted member. To shed light on the impact of life sentences, we spoke to a former member of the Hells Angels, who has agreed to share his experience. For the purposes of this script, we will refer to him as Jake. Jake recalls the day he was sentenced. "I always thought I was invincible. We had each other's backs, and the adrenaline was a high like no other. But the moment they announced my sentence, it hit me like a freight train. Life? I never thought it would come to this." The sentencing was a moment of clarity for Jake. He had been living a life filled with reckless decisions, driven by the need to prove himself within the club. He described how, during the trial, the weight of his actions began to sink in. "I remember looking at the families of my victims. I saw their pain, and for the first time, I realized that my actions had real consequences. It wasn't just about the club anymore. It was about the lives I had ruined." Jake's testimony is a powerful reminder that the thrill of being part of the Hells Angels comes at a steep price. When faced with the reality of a life sentence, he experienced a profound sense of regret. Emotional reactions. The emotional fallout from life sentences is not limited to the individuals convicted. Families of both the convicted members and their victims are left to grapple with the aftermath. The family of a convicted Hells Angels member, whom we'll refer to as Mark, shared their experience in the wake of the sentencing. Mark's sister Sarah said, "When he was sentenced, I felt my heart break. I knew the risks he was taking, but I never thought it would lead to this. We lost our brother that day. He's gone, even though he's still alive." Sarah described how her family has been torn apart by Mark's choices. "We had a close-knit family, but now there's this rift. I struggled to reconcile the person I knew with the man who made those choices." The emotional turmoil experienced by families is often compounded by the stigma associated with being related to a Hells Angels member. Many families face judgment and scrutiny from their communities, leading to further isolation. Jake reflected on this aspect as well. "I think about the families I hurt, but I'd also think about my own family. They have to live with the consequences of my actions too. It's a burden I can't undo." The code of silence. The Hells Angels operate under a strict code of loyalty and silence. Members are expected to protect one another, even at great personal cost. This culture can lead to intense loyalty, but it also creates a heavy burden when members face the legal consequences of their actions. When faced with the realities of prison life, many members find themselves questioning the very code they once held sacred. Jake shared his thoughts on this. We never snapped. But in here, you start questioning everything. Was it worth it? Was the Brotherhood really worth a life behind bars? The pressures of prison life can also strain relationships among members. Once surrounded by a tight-knit community, inmates find themselves isolated in their cells, forced to confront the choices they made. Another former member, who we'll call Tom, reflected on the internal conflict many face. In the club, we had each other's backs, but now it's every man for himself. I can't rely on the Brotherhood like I thought I could. In here, loyalty can be a liability. The Hells Angels code of silence, while fostering loyalty, also becomes a source of regret for many when they realize the true cost of that loyalty in prison. Reflections on choices. As Hells Angels members serve their life sentences, they often reflect on their choices, questioning the path that led them to prison. Jake shared his journey of self-reflection. I thought I was living the dream, but now it feels like a nightmare. I had a choice, and I made it. I have to live with that every day. He recounted how the days blend together in prison, leaving little time for anything other than regret. Many members confront their past decisions, often realizing that their need for acceptance and belonging led them down a dark path. I was looking for something, maybe a sense of purpose or identity, but now, all I see is wasted potential, Jake added. The weight of their choices can become overwhelming. Tom echoed similar sentiments, stating, "There were so many moments I could have turned back. I could have chosen a different path, but I didn't, and now I have to live with it." This introspection often leads to a deep sense of regret and a desire to make amends, but the reality of prison life limits their ability to do so. Life after sentencing. Life in prison for Hells Angels members is a stark departure from the freedom they once enjoyed. The transition to prison life can be jarring, and many face unique challenges as they adapt to their new reality. Prison life is marked by strict routines and regulations, stripping away the autonomy that many Hells Angels members had grown accustomed to. Jake described his experiences. "It's not the same Brotherhood here. You're on your own, and that's a harsh reality. You start to see the true cost of the life you chose." Isolation becomes a common theme for many inmates. With limited contact with the outside world and the absence of the camaraderie they once had, members often feel disconnected and alone. Tom elaborated on this feeling. "You start to understand the difference between camaraderie and companionship. In the club, we had each other's backs, but in here, it's every man for himself. You begin to realize that the bonds you thought were unbreakable can dissolve in an instant." The challenges of adapting to prison life can also lead to mental health struggles. Many members experience depression, anxiety, and feelings of hopelessness as they confront the long sentences ahead of them. The impact on the organization. The consequences of life sentences extend beyond individual members. They resonate throughout the Hells Angels community. The loss of leadership, skills, and members creates a ripple effect that affects the entire organization. As experienced members face life sentences, the club struggles to maintain its structure and unity. Tom discussed the challenges this presents. "Our club has taken hits, but it continues. It's a cycle, but the cost is high, too high." The impact of these sentences can lead to shifts in club dynamics. Newer members may feel pressure to step up, while older members struggle with the loss of their peers. Jake noted, "There's a constant turnover of leadership. It creates uncertainty within the ranks. I think about how many lives could have been different if we had made better choices." The cycle of crime and punishment continues to affect the Hells Angels, with each life sentence serving as a reminder of the consequences of their actions. The stories of Hells Angels members facing life sentences reveal a complex web of choices, loyalty, and consequences. As they reflect on their lives, we are reminded of the thin line between freedom and captivity. For many members, the allure of the motorcycle club lifestyle becomes overshadowed by the harsh realities of prison life. Their testimonies offer a glimpse into the inner workings of a world defined by brotherhood, loyalty, and ultimately, regret. In the end, the consequences of their actions extend far beyond the prison walls. Families are left to pick up the pieces, and the cycle of violence continues to ripple through the community. Outro. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the Hells Angels members facing life sentences. Their stories are powerful reminders of the choices we make and the consequences that follow. As we reflect on their journeys, let's remember the human aspect behind every crime, every choice, and every life affected. Stay tuned for more insights into the complexities of crime and punishment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.